Well, hello, everyone. My name is Kevin L. Jackson. I'm your host on Digital Ventures. Thank you for joining us today. Digital Ventures focus on how to best use digital assets to innovate business. And today, though, we're actually focusing on you, the individual, the professional in digital assets. What does certification mean to you in your career? And with me today, I have Bryant Nelson, the CEO of Web3 Certification Board, to tell us how to get certified in Web3. So, Bryant, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure to join you always, Kevin.
No, I learned so much when I speak to you. But many people probably don't even know that Web3 certification is a thing. Can you tell me a bit about the certification board and why it's important, or how did it even come about?
Sure. Let's start with the origin story. That seems to be the easiest way to approach this, and that is that in some prior roles that I had, I was the director of training for a very profitable crypto exchange. I was the director of training for a very profitable blockchain protocol, and basically what we saw in both those organizations was the lack of clarity as to what people's skill sets were. And uh, as in most technology, there's certifications that justify or at least validate and verify that a person has a specific skill. Web3 has kind of been left to the side. And
Mm,
so as I left those firms, I came to the conclusion that what needed to be done is there needed to be a certification body for Web3. There are a lot of companies out there that quote unquote say they have certification. Well, the problem that you have with those certifications is that they're really not enterprise grade certifications. They're really more, hey, look, I took this course, I sat in my seat, and I have no idea whether I learned anything, but I did that. And so, please take this certification as validation for that. Unfortunately, that's not how the real world works. ISO, which is the International Standards Organization, has
mhm.
established the gold standard for what certifications need to be. And so the Web3 Certification Board, we adhere to the ISO 17024 standard. And that requires us to actually do a lot on the certification side. And the first thing that we have to do is we have to be able to validate a person's skill sets based on a predetermined body of knowledge that the person needs to have for that certification. And not only do we have to do that, but we have to have these assessments then created that are proctored and remove all biases from them. So that's what the Web3 Certification Board does. We focus on Web3 technologies only,
Mhm.
and we have actually done something that's a little different than some certification boards. Some certification boards only focus on the technology side of the business, meaning I'm a programmer, I need to know what, say, C++ is, and so I'm going to get a C++ certification. Or I work in cybersecurity, I need to have a specific cybersecurity certification.
Right.
The problem is that most of the people who work for these companies have no idea what their companies do. That's a perfect example for the company that I worked for, where when I joined as the director of training, 70% of the people who worked for this blockchain protocol company had
Yeah.
no idea what blockchain was.
Okay.
So, really, a lot of the focus that I am doing is really creating institutional validated focus and basically board of director quality assessments for organizations. One of the questions I think that you are alluded to is what can an individual do? I think an
Yeah.
individual can actually do these things. There's a number of progressive certifications, and you can stack them up in terms of very specific areas. So, for example, you could have one that's on accounting, or you could have. We have three certifications as it relates to fintech.
Okay.
So there's a lot of different things that a person can do individually. Where the real value, though, is in organizations. For organizations, the ability to actually have something that they can actually do for themselves. First of all, it creates, without certifications, what you end up having is a liability for the organization, because there's no way for everyone to understand what they are actually trying to accomplish. And what happens is that when you start to provide certifications for an enterprise, they have a documented basis to actually show both regulators and compliance people, as well as the board of directors, everything about their workforce. And so, in essence, what you end up doing is you're starting to see that there's a standardized competency that starts to exist across both divisions and groups of people. And of course, the documentation for that, it withstands regulatory scrutiny. When you start to think of it from an enterprise standpoint, it transforms the workforce uncertainty into something that's of high value for the organization.
Well, you mentioned regulatory 2 or 3 times there, and before the current administration in the United States, the regulators were really pushing digital assets and cryptocurrency, away, saying, no, we don't need that. No, we don't want to use that. No, that's not legal. Have things changed? I mean, has there been a shift? And you see with the current regulation, the sort of, want to do all these things all of a sudden. What does that do to the industry? What did that do to certifications?
Well, if you look at it just from this perspective, this rose-colored set of glasses, the prior administration was surprisingly anti-crypto, anti-fintech, and I really don't have a rational reason as to why that existed, but that was just the case that we had.
Yeah.
With the new administration, they took obviously a much different approach, and that different approach is, for me, and looking at it as a benefit for the ecosystem, is that cryptocurrencies and crypto technologies and blockchain technologies are emerging in such a way that allows for dominance. So one of the very interesting side effects of, say, stable coins, just as an example, is the revalidation of US dollar as the global currency, because almost 99% of all stable coins are based on US dollar denominated exchanges. And what that does is it inherently embeds then the value of the US dollar on a global basis.
Okay.
So that allows for a lot of different things to happen. So, for example, when we had petrodollars, that was based out of an agreement with the United States and Saudi Arabia that all oil commodities would be sold in dollars or denominated in dollars. And so that allows for a huge amount of influx in terms of, I want to choose the right word here. It allows for stability in the marketplace,
Okay.
and eliminates the arbitrage that might exist otherwise.
So it sounds like it's becoming more practical with respect to digital assets. Is it really, I guess, addressing the core issues of business?
Well, what you're actually now bringing up is the idea of tokenization of real world assets,
Okay.
RWAs. What we're seeing is we're seeing organizations like BlackRock, as an example, talking about tokenizing $10 trillion worth of the assets that exist out there. Now, this isn't a huge step. Already in the United States, we have a situation where we already are dealing with a digital asset to begin with. The only difference now that what we're going to be doing is we're now going to be able to trade on these digital assets using blockchain technology as the underlying technology to validate and control that ledger.
Well, that actually brings a lot of transparency. And what I understand, it sort of get rid of a lot of middlemen who are making money being the middleman. So, is this actually creating value or taking value out of the path? You know.
Well, let's use the stock exchange as an example.
Okay.
If you go back 30 years, there used to be people. If you made trades on the New York Stock Exchange, you had to use market makers. You would go to the organization where you have your investments. They would go to their market maker on the floor, and the market maker would then go out there and make the brokers would make an exchange for the securities that you wanted to buy.
Right.
And there was a rise of this thing of called a $2 broker, people went to them simply because then the transactional costs were lower. Well, with the advent of Charles Schwab, and and Robinhood as an example,
Yeah.
we saw those transactional costs essentially go to zero.
Wow.
So did it impact someone negatively? Yes, all those middlemen lost out. All the revenue stream that those organizations were making from acting as the transaction agent disappeared. So it hurt them. But for everyone else, it was a fantastic deal. In fact, now depending on how much volume you put through, assuming that you have that type of volume, they will actually pay you to use them as your transfer agent for these things. The other thing, though, is blockchain does something that is really, really quite important. It used to be when you made a transaction, it used to be the transaction date, and then generally 3 days later, there would be a settlement of sorts.
Okay.
It was a very paper-intensive kind of process. It did become computerized. They made it then, instead of transaction plus 3, they dropped it down to 2. But with blockchain technology, you in essence could have almost instantaneous settlements. And with that, it allows for you then not to have the loss of those funds during those 2 or 3 days. You can actually make the trade, have it instantly settle, and make another trade instantly without any paperwork problems.
So it sounds like you're really creating more value across the industry by enabling and leveraging these digital assets. But what if I'm the owner of a company? I'm the CEO, and sort of getting back to the focus. Is it important for me to now anyone I interview to make sure they have some type of training in digital assets, some type of verifiable certification, or is that something that somebody else does?
Well, if you're the CEO, chances are you're not interviewing anyone. But assuming your HR department has some rules and structures in place for how they hire people, yes, absolutely. Awareness is going to be one of the most important aspects of people having a career in the future. Simply because unless you're a plumber or an electrician or a carpenter,
those aren't digital ventures, I guess, huh?
Right. If you're one of them, these technologies are not really going to be disrupting your career. But if you're in anything that requires technology, so that includes blockchain, it includes AI, it includes quantum, it includes literally every aspect of that you could possibly imagine. These things, these emerging technologies, are highly disruptive. And if you were the CEO, you would give instructions to your HR team, your recruitment team, to say, let's hire people who already have an understanding of this. And not just some cursory understanding, it's some verifiable way of understanding it. And so you would look at it from the standpoint of that's who you want to hire, but then what do you do about your existing talent?
Okay, yeah.
You need to actually now go to them and upskill them into the new directions that the organization is taking. You need to have that alignment of both the direction, the alignment of the emerging technology, and where that's taking the organizations forward.
Well, I don't know what job doesn't use technology today. It seems like technology is everywhere. And in fact, if you look at the news, I've sort of seen in the last few weeks, there's professional certification programs being launched in India, a crypto exchange called GRVT. They have launched their own institute for advancing global cryptocurrency education. In Nigeria, okay, they have new digital asset training certifications. And the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority here in the United States has announced a blockchain education program. It seems like everybody's trying to get on the bandwagon. What, from your point of view, is that true?
Well, of course, every organization wants to manage its ecosystem.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that crypto exchange that has come up with an institute to help people understand crypto as it relates to their primary business as an exchange.
Okay.
Every organization has that and has always had that. We 30, 40 years ago, we called that some types of marketing. In technology, it started to become a developer relationship standard where the organizations would manage the people using their technologies.
Yeah.
These ecosystems have kind of always existed. Now, how does it relate to certifications? Well, I would be very careful to understand when they use the word certification, what does that really mean?
Okay.
Is it mean that they're just educating somebody on the particular topic or their own technology? Or is it really a validation of an individual's skill set to understand that particular piece of technology?
So I guess it's also really important to adhere to a global standard. And I guess that's what you're doing, right, with ISO.
Correct. The ISO accreditation standard, again, is the gold standard. Every organization in the world will accept an individual who has an ISO accredited certification. That be governments, NGOs, for-profit organizations, your mom and pops. That's literally the standard. It's if you kind of think of it, it's the equivalent of, not necessarily, but I'm going to use it as an example. It's the equivalent of having a college degree in a specific major. That at least validates that you have an understanding of it. Now, what you do with it is an entirely different, question and problem, but at least there is a standard for that. So the standards that we issue, this is the way that I would look at it.
Yeah.
If you're in Nigeria, as an example, and Nigeria is a booming country. It's estimated that by 2050, it will be the fourth most populous country in the world. So it's growing, and of course, India is massive. But even in India, if an Indian individual was trying to be hired and they had a certification from, say, the local Indian company versus an ISO accredited certification, say from me, mine will have greater value simply because of that ISO branding.
So where do you see the board going in 3 to 5 years? Is this, I assume you think it's going to grow, or is it sort of plateauing? I know, professional certification for a long time was something that was critical, but recently it's kind of like, maybe it's not so important. What do you see from your point of view?
I think that we're still in what I would refer to as the early days of certification for Web3 technologies. And again, that includes blockchain, it includes AI, it includes quantum, it includes even 5G, as an example. Machine learning, all of these things are emerging. So we're really in the early days of that. It is only going to become more and more important for organizations. That's really what the key is that the organizational value of these certifications for their staff and for their talent is only going to grow. I don't think that there's any scenario where I think that we've plateaued or it's diminishing. That would be truly a black swan event.
Wow. So what I hear is that if you're in any type of digital venture, you better really get that certification today. So if a listener out there or a viewer was trying to understand and trying to frame their own career, what's that golden nugget that they should get from this discussion?
Well, those are really two things that you're asking.
Okay.
What should a person do, and what is the golden nugget? To me, the person, an individual who wants to have a career outside of these blue collar jobs that have no technology
Yeah.
really as an aspect built into them, needs to actually make a concerted effort to plan on obtaining and validating their skill set for employers. But the more important aspect of it is that even if you have two individuals who have identical backgrounds and
Yeah.
identical skill sets, the person with the certification is going to be the one who ends up being hired. It is also, we're dealing in a situation also in an environment where these emerging technologies are changing so rapidly that, what we're thinking about today may not even be relevant 6 months from now or a year from now. If you take AI as a perfect example, in the literally 2+ years of AI, we've gone from it being somewhat of kind of an interesting technology to almost instrumental. You've
Yeah.
seen companies like McKinsey and Company, who now have 40% of their quote unquote staff
Yeah.
who are AI agents. And of course, what makes blockchain so important is blockchain makes AI honest. So when you start
Wow.
dealing with it from that standpoint, understanding these technologies and understanding where things are going to go in the future, having these skill sets and validating these skill sets for both the individual as well as for the enterprise is going to be paramount for careers.
Wow. Wow. So you're really opening our eyes to the importance of digital assets, not just the technology, but its relation to business and your own knowledge and certification. So, Brian, thank you very much for helping us better shape our future. And you in the audience, today we focused on what would help you in your business. We're trying to help you turn your assets into your business advantage. So please subscribe, share, and watch the next episode of Digital Ventures. We're here to help you. Have a great rest of your day.